Welcome to Face to Face. Our guest today is Ed Zuker. He is a founder and CEO of Chestnut Realty, which is celebrating 50th year anniversary this year. Through last 5 decades, his company and real estate has gone through several cycles. We are going to talk to him about his experience and Chestnut Hill Realty's experience during all these cycles, what he thinks about the future, and what are the lessons we can learn from him. Ed, welcome to our show.
Prentice, so nice to be here.
Absolutely, it's really a pleasure talking to you, and congratulations on the 50th anniversary.
Thank you.
Which is amazing landmark. So we are going to have an open-ended discussion about everything possible, right?
Very good.
We can do that. Good. So first, let's start with the 50th anniversary. This is a big landmark, and how you feel about after going through all these different cycles.
Well, I'm just surprised that it's been 50 years. I'm not that old.
Sure, absolutely. Great. Excellent. Yeah.
But it's I got involved in real estate because my family has been in real estate for many generations, and so I was born into it, and I used to go for a Sunday ride with my 2 younger brothers, 2 younger sisters, and my parents for an ice cream cone, and it always ended up on a Sunday. It always ended up looking at a building that my father was interested in. So it goes way back, and both my grandparents were in real estate, going on both sides.
From both sides, yeah.
Yes.
So now, after 50 years, if you can just talk about some of your portfolio, for example, how many units you have, how many markets you are in.
Well, we have around 5,000 apartments right now, some retail and some office space, but mainly they're in the apartment business. And the retail and office space came with the apartments, and they're related. And I've over the years, I started first as dealing with as a broker, renting apartments, learning about.
Really? I thought you would have just straight coming to the.
No. I had 10 brokers working for me, and so I learned how to what the value was of rental and what rented well, what didn't, what did I want to be in. I didn't really want to be in the student housing. I wanted to have a quality product. I wanted to have a good long-term residence, and I didn't like to see the high turnover. So, I studied some of the things in real estate, where commercial real estate, where somebody would take a high-quality tenant in commercial, and they'd get the lease. And then they would turn around and they'd look to build it, and they'd get a good builder. And then they'd go to the bank or the insurance company, and they would say, I have a good tenant, and I have good numbers from a good contractor. I just need a mortgage to build it, and then they owned it. So I said, well, it should be applied also to the apartment industry. The same thing. If you have a good resident, then the banks are going to like it, lower turnover, lower costs, and easier marketing from it. So my early days in rental was based on that. And when I brought the right residents to the owners, I became the #1 broker that they had. So when Friday the list went out, I knew everything was on the list, and my initial CHR, Chestnut Realty, was right next to half of them with lines going through. Said, how'd you get those rented? And it was because they trusted I was bringing the right resident to do it, so if something came up, they called us first.
So the trust still remains the key ingredient of any business, especially in real estate you are.
Yes.
What are the other things which you think have changed and not changed during the last 50 years?
Well, originally, I used to say a safe, clean, secure place to live. And that was back, at the end of the 70s, beginning of the, the beginning of the 70s rather, into the 60s, and following into certain, into the 80s, but the beginning. And it was really, you were looking for security in it. So if you had a secure place, so the key was proper locks, proper security, and then good maintenance, 24 hours, 7 days a week on call. Used to joke around because we had a radio controlled. It was a big
sure,
thing
yeah,
back then,
sure.
And the beeper that went off.
Sure.
And we used to joke around. You better be dressed when you call, because immediately if he's in that area, he might be knocking on your door.
Sure.
So we built that reputation there. But when I first got involved and we bought some buildings, almost every one of the buildings were a couple living in the basement that took care of the property. And even in the suburbs of the newer buildings, it would have a couple. He did the maintenance and repairs, and she did the leasing and the cleaning, and they had call hours in from 9 to 10 and 4 to 5, where you'd call them in and they'd wait by the phone. And the first building that I took over to manage, I went ahead and had the superintendent walk me through. He says, first I walked through the building and I checked to see if any bulbs are out in the hallway. So the next day I had the electrician come in and put fluorescent lighting throughout the hall, cut down the cost of the lighting. I said, now what's the second thing you're doing? It's supposed to last 7 years.
Sure.
And then and he says, well, I wait for the calls. I said, okay. The next day I showed up with an answering machine, and I put the answering machine in for him. Now you don't have to wait for the call.
Sure. Go do the work, right?
Yeah. So, so it was interesting back then. And it's still today. There are other things, because the oil embargoes came in, and the cost of fuel and energy went up, and learning how to bring down that cost, and basically what we call now our carbon footprint. And so today it's totally different. It's all professional. And we pride ourselves because we're a mid-sized small company. Yet on a national stage, we win more awards for the people that work with us.
The one thing I wanted to stay there for a few minutes is you mentioned about the green and the environment, which is a big issue. We all know that it is coming, it is already there. And with you owning 5,000 plus units, what you are doing to keep the environment safe? Well,
it goes way back. We've cut our footprint by 60%.
In all the units?
Across the board. It starts with energy. So your heating, HVAC systems. We put in, we look at every single component of that, and we invest for the future. So we're different because we're owned, family owned, and we are not a REIT. So we work on a longer term. We're not worried about quarterly returns. We're looking at a 10-year return. So we invest heavily in in the electric, bringing down the cost. First was to fluorescent, and then now to LED, and then to light controls with photocells and
recycling, of course.
Recycling centers that we have going with that. With the HVAC, there's all kinds of controls. We designed them years ago in the 70s with heat timer, where you had outside temperature controls. You set up zones so that where the sun was coming in was different from where the shade was. So it wasn't that I used to get upset. I'd drive by a building, I'd see windows open in the winter, and I'd be on the phone right away. Well, we figured out how to put sensors in so that what the temperature was, and then the valve would shut down. So there's a lot of, we've done cogeneration, where a bigger property has a big, boiler and so forth, and we've broken those down into different, into smaller boilers, and back then we were doing it, which is breaking down the big boiler that during the winter produces free hot water. And then in the summer, it has a small boiler that produces just the hot water, where before they just used to use a big boiler in the middle of the summer.
Sure. So now the 5,000 is a big portfolio, and so are you still what I noticed when you said that you drive down and see open windows. How active you are with this?
Well, so I'm always reading, because it's the whole beauty about anything is looking over new technologies and stuff. I'm really interested in the photo. I'll taking a look at windows, and eventually the light coming in will create electricity. In the roof material and so forth. All these things are happening so quick with electronics, with the microchips and so forth.
Sure.
I expect you're going to see lowering our carbon footprint, and the best way to lower it is through incentives. And the best way to lower it is to turn around and get the government involved in encouraging everyone.
So how much the carbon footprint you have brought down in your portfolio? What percentage?
Well, we've done about over 60%.
Which is quite good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sure that you must have done some surveys of your tenants. What are the 2 or 3 things tenants really like about Chestnut Hill Realty properties?
They feel they're respected. And we put down, you'll see in our trucks running around, it says managing people's home with pride. And that's what we really go across the board. And our maintenance 3 years ago came to us, our head of maintenance says, our personnel would like us, maintenance personnel would like us to put on our shirts committed to excellence. So, the real key is you're in a rental community. You don't have the responsibility of your home. You don't have to worry about shoveling the walkways, cutting the grass, any of the maintenance. The people are there. You don't have to worry who you have to call or what you have to do, and it's clean. And we create now communities. So it's now it's not just a safe, clean place to live. It's creating community now. People are wanting more. They're moving from their homes, either because the young professionals who used to be there, or they're now moving from the homes because the kids have left. So what we try to do now is expand from the 4 walls of the apartment to a community inside, offering all kinds of ways to work, because now more people are working at home. So how do you have workspace? How do you have high-tech internet to be working off of?
That's very important today.
Oh yes, it's extremely. And how do you provide social areas to congregate? Now it's funny to watch. They all have their little buds in their ears, and their computers open, but they want to be out in the open, seeing people coming around as they're working on the thing, and feel like it's something. And then sometimes they talk to somebody.
So it seems that the Chestnut Hill Realty has really kept up with the technology and all the changes, and you seem to be very excited about them.
Yes.
As during the last. So, is there anything in the last 5 decades which you do not like in real estate?
How? Well, I'd say.
Or something is worrisome to you?
No, I think it's moving good. The thing that's interesting, I like competing against the REITs.
Okay.
Okay, because they have a national view.
Sure.
They want to spread their leases out over the period. They want to run like a hotel with their pricing that goes different, and then they could jump the rates and lower the rates and so forth. And we're looking for the long-term resident. They're more looking at 50 to 70% turnover. I'd like to be down around 30% turnover. So it's more of, as it becomes more and more professional, it's being owned by larger companies, we can turn around and compete, because our market is different than the national.
And you have more knowledge about your local market than the REITs have.
Most of our rentals are from referrals of our existing residents or the neighbors.
Now let's talk a little bit about REITs. I think the whole REIT boom, I think, came in '90s or something like that, when everybody was starting a REIT, and apartment REITs were
Right.
really, he thought that they would really take over, they would throw out the private investors in multifamily and all. So how that has played in the market?
But that's similar to what happened back around here under rent control.
Sure.
Because of the constraints and everything involved, you had condo conversions happening.
Mm-hmm.
So you ended up seeing a real trend then from owners that had properties that turned them into condominiums and they cashed out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the same thing happened when the REITs came in.
Mm-hmm.
They had a lot of money. They needed to put it out, and a lot of investors that came in, with money, looking to take advantage of the long-term appreciation of real estate. So it's very enticing for people as they get older and they're looking to retire to sell their properties at a value that they never thought they'd have.
Now, it's just that Realty is a private, just your investment, or you have wealthy investors as well? Or
We have a
outside?
few investors, but mainly it's a generation skipping trust that owns it.
5 generations, right?
Well, 5 generations coming, and this is going to take 5 more to go with it. It's interesting because during the one of our downturns, that's where you learn the most.
Now, which year was that?
That was the 80s, end of the 80s, beginning of the 90s.
90s, okay.
And during that time, you had recall.
Sure, I remember.
You're upside down
Sure.
on the value.
Sure.
But wait, I'm paying the mortgage. Well, that doesn't mean anything if you're paying the mortgage. The mortgage, we just had an appraisal done, and your building isn't worth what the mortgage is supposed to be.
Sure.
We're calling your loan or whatever you're doing. So during that time, I hired one of the better law firms that were involved. It was in the bankruptcy law.
Mm-hmm.
And I hired somebody that was personable and looking to work with people to keep the wolves off the and learn how to work with your lenders. And they were in as bad shape as we were because also the government's coming in saying your balance sheet doesn't look right. You've got to start foreclosing, or you have to start taking over.
I remember that was the time when Harold Brown filed the biggest bankruptcy in Massachusetts. That was in.
And it made out like
exactly.
So I was told that I should have done that, but I wanted to make sure that I paid everyone back. And I was told, well, if I did that, I'd be able to start at a lower base and come out much better. And it might take 10 years before, but I have a value of paying back what I said that I owe and looking after people, doing that. And it was an interesting time because at that time I had my head of the bankruptcy division, one of the large firms in Boston, referred to their estate planning. I said, look, the values are way down. I know I'm coming out of this. With the values down, I want to transfer it to my kids and my future grandkids. So I ended up doing that, having the appreciation go and no tax consequence on that because I'm not the one owning it.
Sure.
So that's how we have multiple generations.
So, but you were recommended by advisors to go for bankruptcy route at that time?
Oh yes, yeah.
Sure, okay.
Yeah, no, they recommended it. I refused to do that.
So how big was the portfolio you are saying in the 90s you had?
Well, back then I did over 2,000 condominiums, either built or converted back then. I shut down the condo division right before that because the people coming in to buy a condo were investors, outbidding the homeowner.
Sure.
Well, when the wholesaler is paying more than the retailer, something's wrong with the market. So we had about 1,500 to 2,000 units of ownership, and plus about up to 4,000 units of condominium management.
Okay. Do you guys still manage for the third parties or not?
No, I don't. I sold those divisions. I sold the sales division, went out of the sales, went out of the condo management, and decided we were going to work with building our apartment portfolio.
And now you are about 5,000 plus minus.
Yes.
Okay. So you still want to, let's stay in the 90s.
Yes.
So what are the couple of other lessons you learned from the recession of late 80s and early?
Well, every recession that we've gone through since, because I got into it, got in the 70s. So, I'm working and my father, managing properties with my father, had a bunch of investors and they had a couple of thousand units. And he says to me, back then, why should we tie in 9.5% with the insurance companies when you could borrow at 2.5 over prime? And prime since World War II has never gone over 6.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the first oil embargo went to 12.
Sure, okay.
Then I, so all of a sudden I got the keys dropped on my desk. And I'm going to Florida. It's 49. I'll see you later. You take care of all these people and deal with the banks. And I was in my 20s, so I got a great,
great
education.
Sure.
And I understood what was involved. I mean, one of the biggest banks in Boston called up. I called them back, and he started yelling. So I turn around and I say, how many people have you called and who has called you back? I'm going to put the phone down, count to 10, and you better be civil. Put the phone down, I count to 10, I pick it up, and he's laughing on the other end. Okay, I'm willing to listen. And I said, look, the buildings are well maintained, clean. The buildings have good quality residents. We turned it around and all of the rents are in. We paid all the bills and whatever was left over we sent to you. And we didn't take a management fee. Send auditors down to look over our books and I'll meet you to show you the building. 6 weeks later he calls back, how many more buildings do you want to take over?
No.
So I became, in my 20s, an advisor to different banks. They'd send me in to look at a property that they were having problems with, and I'd report back, this owner is the best you can ask for. He's working hard to pay you back. You lower his interest rate, add it to the loan, and give him a chance.
And they listen to you.
Or I said to him, this guy's gone, we better jump in quick. And then I'd find buyers for him, and I'd line things up, and worked with the banks. So I built a reputation of doing that.
So the last recession we had about 2007, 8, around that period. Anything interesting you noticed during this time? Or?
Each one of them is opportunity.
Okay.
So wherever there is, you have a downturn, you have an opportunity. Whether it's the market's dropping and it goes down to 6,000, from what it was, and I don't invest in the market. At that point, I turned around and I said, let's invest. And why did I say let's invest? I said, hell, look at it. I mean, if the market goes any lower, the dollar's not worth anything.
Sure.
So, so you look at each opportunity that comes up, and you're competing against other people. And the main thing is you don't run scared, you use your head. And so one of the downturns we had with the mortgage, we had construction loans going, we're building. Well, I turned around and I said, we have 350 vendors, and we owe $7 million. Now, these were my best friends, and each one was going to call me twice during the month. How many calls is that? And let's make sure we're available to answer the call, and we're available to move money around to help them out, so we can work together around it. So that so it's how do you figure out to not run from the problem, but work with the problem, work with people around you, so that you make.
So now also, the Boston is an absolutely amazing market for multifamily apartment building owners because there is so much scarcity.
Yes.
And there is people always talk about there is a problem of affordable.
Yes.
So how do you look at the Boston residential market?
Well,
or multifamily market?
just what so when we had that downturn, when you were talking about.
You mean the 90s?
No, the one that you said.
2007. Okay.
So we jumped in and started building. It wasn't a lot. I mean, 60 units here and then 60 units there, and a few adding to existing buildings. The hard cost was $76 a square foot. It was like nothing, and I had the best electricians, the best plumbers, the best people who used to turn around and handle 10 people underneath them, who handled 10 people underneath them, and all of a sudden they're looking for a job. The next job we did a year later was $126 a square foot.
But how are you doing
The
that?
next building was $260.
But I cannot believe $76 or something like that.
Because they didn't care about profit or anything. You had an electrician that could do the work of 3 people. Didn't know it was the best job ever done because they knew what they were doing, knew how to get through with it, and they wanted to have a paycheck.
Sure.
So it's an interesting. So what we have now in Boston, in the Boston area, is a governor and a mayor working together to turn around and to keep going with improving the Boston area employment. We have, between the universities and the hospitals, which we educate and train more people, and they leave to go elsewhere. Now they're coming here and they're staying here. And the opportunities, as you see, around Kendall Square and around the Seaport area, wherever you go right now, it's great. So the problem that is out there right now that will kill it is cost of living in Boston. And the biggest cost is housing. Now, against me with 5,000 units, I'm saying you've got to produce more housing because you can't produce the jobs that we're starting off on a negative where we need more housing already, and now we're creating more jobs, so we need more housing to meet those needs plus catch up to the old. You're seeing for the first time Fenway area, Chinatown, the West End, a lot of production of housing, and the price came down last year. It didn't go up. So
that's a good news.
That's the good news for the economy. That's the good news if you're a long-term view on it. It's a bad news if you're a REIT on a quarterly return. But it means that we're doing the right thing. Now, the opposite is the rent control that they're talking about, whichever way you want to go.
I remember, I think you were involved, the last rent control.
Yes. So no, I was involved as I was the president of Brookline Property Owners Association and involved in Cambridge, and I was in the rental housing in the Greater Boston Real Estate Board, and I was representing the large owners on Question 9, which was the end of rent control. And it's what happens is immediately the banks see rent stabilization, rent control, and they get nervous and they'd rather put their money elsewhere. So even when they say, well, we're going to exempt new buildings and everything else, it ends up costing more because less people want to lend, and which relates into higher cost, and it'll eventually bring down the housing increase that we're having.
So now, as we come closer to the end of the interview, just have a few questions where it can be. So the one question is that how will you summarize last 50 years for CHR?
Well, we've had the ups and downs. I surround myself with fantastic people. I get always accolades that come over. Oh, thank you so much. And I don't know what they're thanking me for. Well, because everyone around me has the right to do the right thing and to make sure we're helping others. So it's been so far a great fun ride. You learn more in the downturns. It educates you to protect yourself during the up markets. And I'm looking forward. We're doing a lot of development right now.
So that was my next question, next 50 years.
Well, right now, I am improving my properties, so bringing them up to date. So we're doing a lot of extensive gut rehab. We're updating them to compete against any new product. Our existing portfolio are in great locations. The new product are crammed together, so there's no open space or air. So we have large units and rip the kitchens out to open to.
So most of them are in Greater Massachusetts. Also, you have in Rhode Island.
Yes, yeah. It's at one point we had, before one of the downturns, we had things in New Hampshire, Vermont, Rhode Island, and around. Now it's mainly starts at Harvard Square, Coolidge Corner, Cleveland Circle, Chestnut Hill, West Roxbury, and then Norwood, Canton, heading out towards down the Route 95 to Plainville to over to Providence. Yeah. So and it's all of them. I see the one thing I like is to have good quality staff. So most of them 300, 400, up to 800 units at Hancock Village will be up over 1,200 units in one location.
Sure.
So even Coolidge Corner or Harvard Square is 300 units, Coolidge Corner area is 600 units. So it's a large, easy to manage, having good staff and being on top of it.
So now I know that the CHR is 50 years, but you can trace back the history much farther away, as you were saying, fifth generation.
Yes.
So can you just very briefly talk about very beginnings? What?
Well, it's, look, coming over on the boat, in Europe you weren't allowed to own anything. Everything you had to be in your mind. You were a tailor, you were a doctor, a lawyer, you were a pet, you took care of a shoemaker or whatever it was. And when you lifted up and moved out, or one regime moved.
So which year the family first moved here?
So when they first moved here, they bought, they moved in, and they ended up buying a 3-family, and then they bought a bigger building, and then they ended up,
So which year was that? Like how?
That was in, so far, and I'm doing a little more investigation, that's around 1920.
1920.
So we're coming up soon to the 100th.
Okay, sure. Yeah, well, this 50 year is really great, and really congratulations.
Yeah.
But I want to do a quick rapid fire with you.
Sure.
And I'll just ask a question and just answer that. The one thing you have learned which has really changed your perspective on multifamily?
These are people's homes.
When people rent their home, that's how you have to treat them.
Yeah. In other words, I had a surrogate grandfather lend me money when I first bought over at Harvard Square. He and taught me. It was under rent control, brick building, $250 a month rent, and heat, hot water, everything included. And he said, "Do me a favor, landscape it." Landscape it? I got a waiting list. What do I need to do that for? He says, "Humor me." So I landscaped it, and all of a sudden the rents came in with nice notes. It's a pleasure living here.
Excellent.
And the superintendent kept it cleaner, and there was no trash left around. So I realized that it didn't matter whether it's rent control, subsidized, luxury housing, or whatever, you're managing somebody's home. And people like to come home to a flower that pops up or leave to see that, changes their whole attitude. So that changed everything. I used to do all the landscaping myself and lay out the bulbs.
Who had this?
So I end up with 2 horticulturists and arborists that do it now.
Yeah. Who inspires you? Who has inspired you? In general.
In general, well, it's different people.
Let's speak.
So when I first came, it was Tom Flatley was involved. The Cochrans were involved at the time, and the Wallaces. And it was very inspiring for me. There also was a group of people, and they all had thousands of units and building thousands in the suburbs. No one knew them.
Yeah.
There would be somebody that owned 100 units in Boston, and he was infamous.
Sure.
And not in a good way.
Sure.
So I realized at that point the key was to do the right thing, stay out of the to treat people right,
Sure.
and then I realized to expand into the suburbs And that's why we have 300 units here and 440 there and 400 in other locations, because you really can do a good job that way.
Now, what do you think is your biggest strength?
Our people.
Good. What about your weakness? There's one thing you wish that you could get out of this trait, habit, whatever.
Well, okay, so I say I surround myself with people that like to work within the box.
Mm-hmm. So that's really very.
And they know what their job is and they know what's involved. And they allow me to go, what if we try this?
Mm.
Or this?
Sure.
Or that? And they'll look it over and go, that might work.
Mm-hmm.
So it allows me to think outside of the box. So the only concern that I would say is I don't want many people around me that think outside of the box.
Sure, absolutely.
But, at some point, so I'm setting everything up now that the properties can be maintained for the next 50 years without major rehab or anything easily. So I'm doing a lot of the risk issues right now, but I'd love to see somebody be coming up within the next few generations that want to take it further.
So so you are the fifth generation, right? And then the sixth generation they're already in. They're already in, and.
But see, I wouldn't be as gutsy as I am if in my 20s my father didn't, when he was 49, drop the keys on my desk and say, I'll see you later, I'm taking Mom down to Florida with me. You deal with it. So, when you have something to lose, and you have something, you don't want to take too much risk to be doing that. When you have nothing to lose, and that's how I was at that point, I didn't own anything then. And I had the opportunity to take advantage of things, and I learned a lot that way. I don't know how a generation learns that, because there's two pieces to it. One is the guts to do it, but the other piece is the knowledge to do it right.
Sure.
And to take that risk. And why take that risk? So
now my last question is, and I'm going to start there. So last question is to you is that if I ask you to make just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 predictions for the next 10, 15 years for multifamily in Boston.
Well, I'd say the first one is that you need to understand that no longer the banks control like interest rates and so forth. Before you had volatility because Germany needed money, Italy needed money, they were competing against each other, the banks were lending it and the rates went. Now you have the G7 controlling interest rates, and the worst thing that could happen is interest rates jumping and the economy changing, which then puts those people out of office. So you have a lot more the worldwide economy working together to try to keep it stable, so they're all in office.
Sure.
So I think that you have stability that way. So hopefully you're not having a lot of bumps and bruises, which hurt a lot of people.
Good point.
The second thing is I hope that more production comes out.
I mean more units.
More units.
Sure.
And I hope that that the NIMBY sort of, I'm hoping that the realization of the YIMBYs now who want to see housing, more housing to bring the housing cost down are active, and that there's a realization that, like any other industry, the more supply, the lower the price.
Sure, absolutely.
So I predict that it's more and more becomes the hospitality industry. So you're going to find more and more like communities and tying it together for the resident is the next piece of it. And I'm looking at it's, how would you put it? It's a piece. I had it 1 minute ago.
Okay, take your time and we will.
Okay.
Yeah.
So okay. So we have just did some luxury housing that took a real risk on over in Newton, around the corner. We call it Hancock Estates. And with the tax change, where you can't take your house and flip it to something new and not pay the tax if it's more money, you have to pay the tax when you sell it.
Sure.
And the capping of how much you could deduct in interest and real estate taxes and so forth, and the new tax laws, has changed the equation of housing. And in this area, Chestnut Hill, you know, people selling their homes for $2 million, they pay the tax, and then they want to downsize and they move in town, and they have to come up with another million or two
Sure.
to
Really?
downsize.
Sure.
And then they have to fix the building up.
Sure.
So we went ahead and built 2 bedrooms, 2.5 baths with a den, and they're about 2,000 square feet with beautiful community space and so forth. And they're renting for about $8,000 a month. They pay for the heat, the hot water. They pay the utilities, water and sewer and everything else, just like they did in their home. And they have a product where you press a button and the lights come on the way out. Press a button, the lights go off, the music goes off, the TV goes off. You walk into your bedroom, you press a button, the shades go down, and
Amazing.
so it's everything that I, visiting in one of the top hotels around the world,
Sure.
have in their home. So these are people who travel, who see things, and they don't see any of this downtown.
Sure.
And guess what? They don't have to come up. They can take their money, put it in the bank, get interest on it, and they want to leave to go somewhere. There's some concierge that's there. They can check on the unit, make sure everything's all right, come and go. Don't have to worry about home ownership, condominium fees, or a board that's going to be upset, and somebody's looking to please you all the time.
Yeah. Excellent.
I think that's the movement you're going to see.
That's what we see, that technology and luxury is the...
And the need for home ownership and the responsibilities for that is not as important.
Your last word on 50 years.
It's been great. I really enjoyed it, and I can't wait for the next chapter at Chestnut Hill Realty, and really looking forward to seeing what the kids and the grandkids and hopefully the great-grandkids do.
Excellent. Ed, thank you very much. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
And again, congratulations on a great landmark of 50 years.